moved from Iowa back to Kentucky, I really had no idea where I was going to be able to hunt. You know, I went from all this great permission ground in Iowa to no permission in Kentucky. And so I made it my goal late spring to pretty much cover as much ground as I could, to try to find at least a few properties that I could hunt to have a chance at a deer this year. And my strategy changed a little bit on how I tried to get permission on these farms this year. You know, back in Iowa, I'd pretty much just spot an area on a map and go from there on trying to get permission. This year, I drove and scouted as much as I possibly could, tried to cover as much ground as I could, driving back roads and stuff, and tried to find a specific deer that I would want to shoot. And then from there, I would go out and knock on doors and try to get permission. So if I found a deer that I wanted to shoot, I would start with that property to try to get permission, and then if that didn't work out, I'd spread out from that property and try to get permission around them, so I can at least be in the game on that deer. The first deer that I found that I wanted to shoot, he wasn't fully grown yet, but I knew that it was a deer that I would want to shoot. He had a wide frame, and so I went and knocked on the farmer's door, and he didn't give me permission to hunt, but he did give me permission to film, which isn't a terrible thing. You know, I was able to get in there and film him, and I was trying to figure out if he was coming off of a different property, so maybe I could get permission on the adjacent property from where he was coming from. But he wasn't. He was pretty locked in on that property, but I knew it was a property that he was going to leave once he started thinking about does. So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind, and I still tried to get permission on the properties around him, knowing that he would eventually leave, because he was just bedded in a little draw. But you know, trying to get those surrounding properties, it kind of led me into finding more deer. There was this draw that kind of ran through a bunch of these different properties that I knew that deer were going to use as a travel corridor. And so after finding that deer and trying to get the surrounding properties, I found this other deer that was a giant that had a drop tine. And after finding him, I was determined to try to get permission on him. And you know, I probably knocked on 10 or 15 doors around that area, and I just kept striking out. I couldn't get permission, and I was getting so frustrated just because this deer was so big, and you know, I couldn't get any permission. And what I was noticing was all these farms that I was trying to get permission on were, you know, 80 plus acres, you know, big farms that have already been leased or somebody has already hunted them. And so I started to try to look on a map and try to really focus on these smaller properties that people might overlook. And there's this tiny little property, it was 7 acres of timber, right beside where this deer was feeding in this field. And I went up and asked the landowner, he said, "Yeah, man, you can hunt as much as you want. As long as you cut this tree behind my house, you can hunt as much as you want." So right then, I knew it was game on. That was at least in the area of that drop tine buck, and I was also in the area of that wide frame deer that I was trying to get permission on. I knew that he would come through there eventually in the fall. All right, guys, it's August the 9th, and I'm on a brand new permission farm. I got permission on this farm yesterday. What I've been doing this summer is just kind of driving around glassing fields, just trying to find some deer that I'd want to target. Since I moved back to Kentucky from Iowa, I don't have any permission at all. And so I've just kind of been knocking on doors and trying to gain permission wherever I can. And this is my first piece. I was glassing 2 nights ago and found this deer, and I didn't realize how big he was until I looked at the footage the next day, and as soon as I saw the footage, I went and knocked on his door, and I got permission on this just tiny 7 acres of timber that borders this bean field that he's been in. So I've only filmed him one time. Hopefully I can get out there some more and lay eyes on him, get some better footage. But it's kind of a tough situation. First of all, I'm probably 80 yards from the back of his house, but this ditch you can kind of see behind me kind of falls in, and this creek runs right here behind his house. So I'm gonna put a stand up in this tree right here and throw a camera up and see if I can get some pictures of him. He was about 300 yards away from here, so I don't know if I'll get pictures of him or not right now, but I know I will down the road, because this is a great little pinch right here that runs in between these two ag fields. So if I don't get pictures now, I'm sure I will in the fall. So, you know, a few weeks go by and I tried to go locate that drop tine buck again, and I just could not find him. I don't know what it was, but that night that I filmed him, I must have been in the right place at the right time. But I have not gotten any pictures of him since, and I've not seen him since. So I know that deer will eventually come through that draw at some point this fall. And I'll definitely have cameras there to watch them for sure. But you know, I knocked on so many other doors around that area, and I just could not get any other permission. And so I figured out pretty quick that I had to find a different area. What I found in Kentucky is which I think it's like this with every state, but there's certain pockets of, you know, the counties that have really good quality deer in them. And that's what I'm trying to look for, is these little pockets that have really good genetics. And so again, I kind of started from square one and covering as much ground as I could, driving every night and trying to find some bucks that I would shoot. And I ended up finding another good area where, you know, 3 or 4 good bucks and 2 square miles, you know, we're feeding in fields pretty consistently that I was watching. And again, I spread out and started getting permission. And there was one night in particular that I drove and I saw this buck in a field, and it instantly caught my eye, and I knew that was a buck that I wanted to target for sure. I started looking at the properties around it. I started on the property. It was a bigger property he was on, and you know, I knew it was a slim chance that I was going to be able to get permission on him, but I tried anyway and I struck out. But I noticed that there was a little tiny 4-acre piece of timber next to the field that he was in that I tried to get permission on, and I knocked on the guy's door and he gave me permission. So I went in and put a camera up, hung a stand, and I actually went in that same day that I got permission and filmed this buck come in this field, I got some awesome footage. I just got permission on this piece today. I found a pretty good deer in this field last night. The buck that I was in here trying to film has already been out here. He came out for about 15 minutes and he went back in the woods. It's still pretty early, it's like 5:30. So hopefully they come back out. He's with a bachelor group. There's a pretty tall Ghoul 8 that's in the same group too, so hopefully they come back out. I'm pretty excited about this property. It's really small, but it's set up perfect. Great entry and exit. And I just set up a camera today, so hopefully I'll get them on camera too. So it was pretty awesome to film those bucks. You know, one of my biggest passions now is not just the hunt, it's just capturing footage of these deer. So I knew I had a pretty good chance of getting an opportunity at these deer. And I actually had to go to Wyoming with Realtree to film a hunt. And I was gonna be gone for, you know, the first 3 or 4 days of season. And so when I got back, I was really itching to get in the tree, and I had the right wind, so I made the first sit for those deer. All right, well, it is September 7th, and this is the first time that I'm behind the bow this season. I've been filming with Realtree in Wyoming, which was an awesome trip. Great guys, the scenery was awesome. It was just a fun trip. I just got back, and I'm headed to the stand. I'm going after 2 deer tonight that I've been watching. I've been filming a little bit, and I've also been getting trail cam pictures of. And I'm really excited. The conditions are great. I got high expectations tonight. It's in the mid 70s. Try to slip in there. I'm getting in there. I mean, it's 2 o'clock right now. There's some deer that have been getting in there around 3:30, so I'm gonna try to get in there and beat them. So I'm set up and ready to go. All right, well, it's September 7th, and I'm settled in here in the tree. I got in here really early. I got in here at like 2:30, just because there's been some deer that have been coming in at like 3 and 3:30, so I tried to beat them in here, and I'm glad I did, because about 10 minutes after I got set up, I had a deer come in, just a small buck. But I really like this spot. This is a 4-acre property that I picked up this past August. And what I did all summer was just drive around the roads, back roads, and just, if I found a deer that I wanted to shoot, then from there I just started knocking on doors. And I landed this piece of property that's just 4 acres. But I think it's the right 4 acres. There's 2 deer that I'm in here after. I'd be happy with either one of them. I'm not gonna have much of a deer season this year just because I'm gonna be on the road filming all fall. So I gotta try to get it done before November. But these 2 bucks in here are nice bucks. I got some footage of them. And I've been watching them for a couple weeks now. So I'm really excited. When I was setting up, I had a deer run across a bean field, but I wouldn't think it's from me. There's no way he heard me or saw me. And I wouldn't think he smelled me. I don't think the wind was blowing that direction, but it feels great. The conditions are awesome. I have high expectations for tonight, so we're all settled in. It's gonna be a long sit, but honestly, they can come in anytime. Man, that was crazy. I had a buck and a fawn right here in front of me. And I was watching them, and a bobcat with a rabbit in its mouth came right up to him, and a doe was behind the bobcat chasing it and blowing at it. I wish I could have got it on film, but I couldn't get the camera on them quick enough. It just happened so fast. But I hope that doe blowing doesn't mess up anything. When that bobcat came through, everything just kind of scattered out. So it's still early. It's about 5 o'clock. So hopefully it happened early enough where it doesn't mess anything up. You know, I had pretty high hopes for that hunt, and it was a great hunt. I saw a lot of deer, had a lot of deer within bow range, but I just didn't see the 2 that I was after. So leading into the second hunt, I had a marginal wind, like I said, the first day, but leading into the second hunt, this wind was gonna be perfect. Perfect north wind, just what I needed. It's gonna blow my wind right down the ditch, the opposite way they were coming from. So I was really confident going into the second hunt. All right, it's day 2, chasing these bucks, September 8th. And we have similar conditions as yesterday. We have about the same temperature in the mid 70s. This time we have a pretty good north wind, which is perfect for this stand. but today's a little bit more sunny. Yesterday was overcast. I saw about every deer last night except the 2 that I'm after. And they ended up coming in about an hour after dark after I left. So it's good to know I didn't booger them at all. And then they're also back in here at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I think, which is a good sign. So hopefully they're bedded pretty close still. But I'm in here nice and early again, hoping I'd beat them in here, and I did. So gonna be another long sit, but it's another sit that I have high expectations. So really excited. Oh man, I think I put a great shot on him. God, it took forever. He was out in the bean field. They all came across the bean field. I was not expecting them to come from there. I thought they were coming from over here. And they worked their way all the way across the bean field right to where I'm at. And I had probably 10 deer below me. And I could not move a muscle. He's still in velvet too, that's awesome. I just smoked a deer.
That big one?
Yeah.
How far did he run?
I don't know, but I absolutely drilled him. I think I heard him fall.
Dude, that's exciting!
I watched him walk across the bean field. I literally had 10 deer right underneath me. I could not move a muscle. And he was the last one to come in. He finally came in.
That is awesome! That is awesome!
Alright, I just got down out of the tree. I'm gonna go try to find my arrow. Looks pretty good to me. got him right here. Man, that's awesome. It's so awesome just to have a plan come together. Such a good deer. All right, well, we got him out where you guys can see him. And man, what a deer. This is probably my biggest buck to date. And I was telling Alexa and Dad earlier, it's probably the proudest I've ever been at shooting a deer. You know, I moved back from Iowa to Kentucky in November, this past November. And from then I was just knocking on as many doors as I could. And how I was doing it was just driving around as much as I could on these back roads and just trying to find a deer that, you know, I wanted to target. And from there I'd spread out and knock on as many doors as I could to try to hunt that deer. The first time I saw this deer was the beginning of August, and I might have some video of them early on in the spring when they were still just had the bases pretty much, but I can't say for sure. But I knocked on the door, a few doors, and got some no's, but I finally got a yes on a property that is only 4 acres big, which is crazy. I've never hunted a property that small before, but when I first moved here, I was, you know, focusing on these bigger properties, and either somebody hunted them or they were leased, or I was getting all these no's. And so I started focusing on these smaller properties that are between, you know, 5 to 15 acres. And I started to get more yeses just because I think people overlook those smaller properties. So obviously this 4-acre property was just in the right spot. And I'm super proud of this buck. I got some awesome footage of him. This is what I love to do. I just love hunting whitetails, and I appreciate Alexa. She drove around with me as much as I drove around, so I appreciate her putting up with my addiction to hunt these bucks. So glad I was able to put a tag on this buck, and I was very fortunate because I'll be gone for most of the fall, so I'm glad I was able to get it done early. You know, chasing these deer has become a huge passion of mine, as you guys can probably tell. And just all the hard work of trying to knock on doors and getting permission and, you know, finding these deer, you know, it felt really good to put an arrow through that deer. And I'm just really thankful that I had the opportunity to. And so I'm definitely blessed that I was able to get it done. And I'm already looking forward to next season.